Until I was 35, I thought religion was a lie made up by some people. Heaven and hell were fiction. I thought these people were crazy and I was proud of my sanity. Some people are so afraid of death that they fantasize about being able to enter heaven after they die. My father died when he was 50 years old. He was a very good father and an eligible husband. He had the same views about religion as I do. But I experienced something later that completely changed my view of religion. It was a very ordinary day. My father had been dead for 10 months. I remember it was a weekend afternoon. After lunch, I was ready to lie down in bed and rest a bit. As I was falling into a deep sleep, suddenly, I appeared in another place. This place was surrounded by smoke and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't get my bearings, and I had no idea where this place was. Slowly, the fog began to dissipate. I saw a young man come out of the fog. This person slowly approached me. I was a little nervous. I didn't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy. When I saw his face, I was taken aback. It was my father. It was not a ghostly apparition, but a full body. I couldn't believe what was happening in front of me. When I saw his ankle, I was sure that he was my father. He had previously had surgery on his ankle, so there were very visible scars. He just stood there and didn't say anything. He looks very healthy now. He's in the shape of a 30-year-old. My father died at the age of 50. Before he passed away, his hair turned all white and he was not very mobile. He died of stomach cancer, and because of the effects of the cancer, he looked more like an 80-year-old man. I saw him wearing a white shirt and gray pants. I didn't need to speak to communicate with my father, I communicated directly through telepathy. I liked this way of communication, it could express myself very accurately. I asked my father, "What does it feel like to die?" He said a lot of things I couldn't understand. What I probably understood was that death is just a new beginning. My father told me to look to my left. All the fog had lifted and I saw a beautiful village. It was full of flowers and fruit on the trees. There were some small houses nestled in a valley. There was a big waterfall on the mountain. I saw a man approaching us. His hair was brown and he was wearing a long white robe. The sleeves of the robe were so long that I could not see his hands. He was floating in mid-air and moving very fast. He came up and embraced me. I felt an intense love. A love that overwhelmed me. I felt like a balloon that was about to be blown up. I knew it was real and that it was not a dream. I told my sister about it 3 days later. I told her that I had a dream about my father. She interrupted me and said she also had a dream about her father. When she started to describe her dream, I was so excited that I shed tears. Because her dream was almost the same as mine. I asked her, "What kind of clothes did my father wear?" My sister answered me, "A loose white shirt and a pair of vintage gray pants." My father looked very energetic. I listened to my sister's description and I was stunned. The only difference between her and me is that I had this dream a day earlier than she did. There is no way to explain two people having the same dream. I began to question my previous thoughts. Because this dream was so real. I believe time will give me the answer. After my father died, my mother was always very sad. I didn't know if I should tell her about it. A year later, I finally found the courage to tell my mother. She didn't believe me at first. She was surprised when I described more details about my father. She shed tears. But she still didn't believe that I had gone to heaven. I told her, I also saw the cat I had in heaven. That cat was given to me by my mom on my 7th birthday. I loved it very much. I told my mother, that cat is very happy in heaven. If someone asks me, do animals go to heaven when they die? I must say, yes. That's my story. If people die, heaven will be our eternal home. I will be reunited with my family again. Many people think I'm a crazy person. But I don't care. I know that God is all around us. He loves each and every one of us. After hearing the first story, do you believe that animals go to heaven too? Feel free to tell me in the comment section. The next story is from a 42-year-old man. He had a painful experience as a child, and it was only when he met God that he ended it all. Let's hear his story. My father was an alcoholic. After every drink, he would beat my mother and me for no reason. I still remember the first time I saw him beat my mother. I was only 5 years old, and when I walked into their room, he pushed me away with his hands and then proceeded to beat my mother. My father was a porter and my mother was a full-time wife. My mother would also work occasionally as a temp to earn some money. When I was 7 years old, my father lost his job because of the economic downturn. After he lost his job, he didn't find a stable job and our life became more and more difficult. But he had to drink every day. After 6 months, my dad's friend introduced him to a job as a security guard. He got a job and we all thought life would return to normal. But my dad continued to drink. Both my mother and I were very afraid of him. Finally, my mother had enough and left alone. I don't understand why she didn't take me with her. I can't forgive her to this day. I was very afraid to stay with my dad because he would get angry at the smallest things. One day, I came home from school. When I walked into the house, it was very messy. I knew I needed to get my chores done before he came home. I hurriedly cleaned the house. I thought, I don't think he will punish me today. Around 8 o'clock, I heard my dad come into the house. When I got close to him, I could already smell the alcohol. I handed him my school report card. "What's this?" he asked. "This is my report card for the semester. I want you to be proud of me." I saw the familiar look in my eyes. He picked up the stick and said to me, "Why didn't you get a perfect score? Are you stupid?" He said vaguely. "I did my best." "Who told you to talk back?" he yelled. When I started crying, I knew what was going to happen. I screamed out in pain. This only made him more angry. Finally, the wooden stick hit me on the head. I fainted right then and there. I thought to myself, I'm going to be beaten to death by my father today. Father didn't mean to stop. Slowly, I could no longer feel the pain. My consciousness was getting fuzzy. I slowly closed my eyes. I don't know how long it took. But when I opened my eyes again, I could see other spirits hovering around me. I tried to talk to them, but they would just stare at me in disbelief, as if they didn't understand what I was saying. Finally, an angel came up to me and welcomed me. The angel took me by the hand and marched on. Although I didn't know where he was taking me, I wasn't afraid at all. I could not feel pain or joy here. Then we stopped in front of a man. I began to think he was also an angel. The angel told me, "This is Jesus." I asked him, "Where are we?" He said, "We are between life and death." He reassured me that he knew what was happening and the pain I had been through before. I was a little angry. I asked him, "If you knew all this was happening, why didn't you stop it?" I remember that when I questioned him, he shed tears. Jesus hugged me and said, "I knew he was hurting my child. I felt every pain you felt. Then why didn't you stop it? You could have easily struck him down, why?" I asked. He didn't answer, he just held me tighter. I felt intense love. Jesus lifted my head and I knew from the look in his eyes that I was going back. "I know you want to stay here, but you can't right now." "Why?" "I don't want to go back, I don't want to go through this pain again." I started crying out. "You won't go through this hurt again, I promise you." I begged him again to let me stay. "I'm sorry, you have to go back. Your life has just begun." I continued to cry because I didn't want to go back. I just wanted him to let me stay there. Any place was better than staying with Dad. Jesus gave me one last hug and told me that he would be here for me. I didn't plead again and soon I was back. When I opened my eyes, I realized I could only open one eye. I was in an ambulance. I could tell because there was a lot of medicine on the shelf. I asked the doctor, "What happened?" The nurse acted surprised. Then said, "Thank God, you are fine." When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor sent me for an MRI. It was because my father had hit me in the temple and caused a brain hemorrhage. It caused an intracranial hemorrhage in my skull. When I woke up in the hospital room for the second time, a police officer was standing next to me. I asked, "Where is my father?" The police officer said, "When my father saw me faint, he called the emergency number." My father said I had accidentally fallen and hit my head on the dining room table. When the doctors treated me, they realized I had been abused for a long time. I recovered and lived with my grandmother. They gave me the feeling of being loved, and although that love could not surpass the love from Jesus, I was very content. Now I have a family of my own. I also give advice to children who have been abused. I tell them that none of it is their fault and that God is with them. And as for my dad, he was convicted for attempted murder. I haven't been to see him. After he was locked up, he tried to write to me asking for forgiveness. I know I don't want to forgive him now, and the damage he did to my psyche is huge. I wonder what I would be doing now if God hadn't shown up then.